Hello everybody! Today I'm going to do batch reviews of 3 winners of the Hugo and Nebula Awards that I disliked to varying degrees. These books are The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick and Stand on Zanzibar by John Brunner, which won Hugo Awards, and A Time of Changes by Robert Silverberg, which won a Nebula Award. I'm going to start with Stand on Zanzibar by John Brunner because it is the most complex and difficult to talk about, and it is the one that I disliked the least or liked the most. Stand on Zanzibar is a very large dystopian new wave science fiction novel from 1968 that is about the stresses overpopulation puts on the world in 2010. This book's structure might be a little bit unusual. I think it probably was new and influential in the 60s. Essentially, the chapters fall into 4 different categories, and most of those categories are for world building and like information overload, not just info dumping, but overload, and only one of them is for the actual story. I'm going to simplify this story drastically. The 2 primary characters are an African-American corporate executive on his way up the chain and his roommate, who is supposed to be a student but is actually a synthesist for the government. He's actually part of the military, I think, and he's a spy. The world has been overrun by eugenics movements meant to improve the population at the same time as decreasing overpopulation. Most of the story is driven by the crazy news that an island nation's government has announced they are going to genetically modify their entire population into superhumans, and the rest of the world goes, what? There's also a story about an African country called Beninia that wants to sell itself to an American corporation to save it because their president is dying and their economy is crap. And there's so much other stuff that's going on because it's a very large cast of characters all around the world doing things, and did I mention information overload? There are quite a few things I like about this. I mean, the fact that it's talking about overpopulation, that Brunner accurately predicted the number of people that would be on the planet in 2010, but his prediction about overpopulation being a real social economic problem doesn't seem quite accurate. The fact that the whole world embraces eugenics movements and restricts the number of children that everybody can have, in fact banning large portions of the population from having children altogether, is just kind of weird and disturbing. I mean, if you know anything about eugenics and the history of that, it's really, really racist and prejudiced. And I think that is why I didn't like this book so much. All of the characters are constantly expressing this everyday casual form of prejudice and misogyny. I don't even want to get started on how microaggressive this book felt towards women who are all whores or housewives. And if they're like a corporate executive, they're not a woman. They're a man in a woman's body. They're literally described as masculine. At parts, I really enjoyed the structure of the book and some of the passages. I could get into the story, but then I would just get yanked out because I hated most of the characters. I really didn't like reading about some of the attitudes people had, and it just got kind of outlandish and weird. So much is going on. I think this is a book that's probably really interesting to reread because it is information overload. I think it's intentionally so. There's no way you can get everything in one read unless you are reading probably very, very slowly and taking your time with it. I didn't have that sort of patience. So out of this batch of books, this is the one that I actually think has some interesting parts, but wasn't to my particular taste, and it may in fact miss a lot of context for when the book was written and what it was talking about. Moving on to a book that I liked a little bit less, The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick, which was published in 1962. This is about a world where the Axis powers won World War II instead of the Allies, and America has been split. The western half is controlled by the Japanese and the eastern half by Nazis. And the world is an awful place. I didn't like this one very much because, one, the scenario is terrifying. I guess the most positive thing I can say about this is that it made me really, really glad I live in this version of the world where these things did not happen. Because otherwise, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't exist. Many people wouldn't exist. We'd all be dead, or we would never have been born. But once again, so many of the characters seem to have this deeply ingrained, casual racism. I can see why, because hey, lots of the world is now controlled by Nazis. There's this myth that Dick wrote the entire book by referring to the I Ching to predict every bit of the plot, which apparently isn't very true. He said that he had used it a little bit for some portions of it, but the entire book wasn't written that way. But I can see why people think that it might have been, because it seems a little random. It's very strange, and the I Ching is used by so many of the characters every day to make just decisions about what they're going to do, which I don't see why anybody would do that. It's odd. Also, I Ching is Chinese, I believe, and they're in Japanese-controlled US. Moving on. I guess the bottom line of this one is that it made me think a little bit. It was kind of terrifying to read portions of it and upsetting because of the racism and the horrible acts, and just the alternate reality is unpleasant, and I think it's supposed to be. But it was so strange, and I didn't enjoy the plot. I mean, characters are doing things. It involves fake American artifacts that the Japanese want to collect. I just didn't like the characters or the plot. Yeah, it was weird, and I could get past that. I wasn't bothered by the writing style, which is also kind of odd. I think some people really don't like the way this is written. It was okay. I think the entire book was okay. Finally, A Time of Changes by Robert Silverberg, which was published in 1971. It won a Nebula Award. I did not like this book. I forced myself to finish it, and I was drinking wine at the time, like I had to get through it. I took an immediate dislike to the book, and I couldn't shake it, mainly because of the sexual content and the way that women do and do not figure into the story. The main character belongs to a human society on another planet that's really big into self-denial. Some of the most vulgar words you can use in their language are things like I and myself. They are very circumlocucious about themselves. They never express their desires, their sins, their inner thoughts to other people, unless they are confessing a steaming pile of garbage to a confessor. Which means I think psychologically all these people are really messed up. The main character meets a human who takes him on a drug trip, and it teaches him how to connect to other people through telepathy and sharing emotions. There's more to it than that. I just didn't like the book. What I really didn't like is the sexual content. The main character won't shut up about his penis. Literally within the first 30 pages, it's, I have a big penis, but I don't know how to use it, and I have a problem with premature ejaculation. Also, I sleep with a lot of women. It's never very good, and many of them are whores. Oh my god! Also, he's in lust with his adopted sister, called a bond sister. It's the one type of relationship where having romantic sexual love is totally taboo, but he's totally in love with her. But mostly, it's all about he has sex with women, and all of the women are literally just repositories for men's penises. It's not cool. I mean, I might be slightly exaggerating, but I don't feel like I really am. And it was uncomfortable. This wasn't just things happen off screen, it was literally describing what he's doing with his penis. Now, I believe there's a reason why this is part of a story. It's not just complete extraneous porn. It is supposed to, I think, in some way describe that before he understands and expresses himself and connects to other people, he's out of control. His only relationships are kind of disgusting sexual ones, and he's not very good at them. And then once he's had his total 60s, 70s drug trip, all of a sudden he's not prematurely ejaculating anymore. So, character development. I can barely say that without cracking up. Some good things about this book. It's short. So there you go, 3 books I didn't like very much for some relatively similar reasons. If you've read any of these and you want to talk about them, even if you love them, try to convince me why they're good books. Do that, let's have a discussion. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.